All right, everybody, welcome back to Late Night Monday Magic. My name is Seth Cross for Praetor Gaming, and I'm joined today by a friend, a very talented friend, as a matter of fact, Michelle Rapp. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for that very kind intro. I'm doing about as well as can be expected as anyone is during this time in history in this country. So,
It's kind of interesting
so
to think,
yeah,
like, maybe in a few years, like, because this is going to go up on YouTube and everything. So in a few years, imagine looking back and, like, people who, or, like, actually, in a few years, my oldest kid's 9, so I can only imagine in a couple years him being like 13 and watching this on YouTube or something, and basically like, well, what were you guys talking about? And I'm like, oh yeah, the world was like on fire in 2020. That was a horrible year. Holy crap! Then I'm gonna feel good because we're gonna get past it all. We're all gonna get past it.
yeah. I mean, if anything, I feel like the last season of Game of Thrones should have prepared us for this. But I
That was the
we
sign, huh?
that was the sign. Seeing Daenerys completely decide to go in a completely direction that wasn't really foreshadowed very well.
Yeah, that was a
And
surprise.
go and go straight into, like, fascist imagery. Yeah,
You
that's,
know,
uh,
it happened so quick, just like
I
2020.
have I have s yeah, just like 2020, I have so many feelings from, like, a writing not just from a feminist perspective, from a writing perspective, but also from a cinematography perspective on that whole thing. I was
Oh
just
my
like,
god. All right, we're
so
about to have a
sad.
fourth topic because let me tell you, so I, as a kid, right, I wanted to be a writer. That was like one of my big dreams was to be an author. My other one was that I wanted to be a police officer as like a little kid, which somehow evolved into me joining the military. And mistakes were made, but here I am. But as an author, like one of the things that I put the most weight into when it comes to like writing a story is the development of the characters. I can forgive plot holes. I can forgive, in a finished product, I can forgive typos. I can forgive bad grammar. I can forgive a lot of things when it comes to reading a story or writing a story. But if your characters are written really well, like they develop really well through the story, that's what really catches me.
Mhm.
My wife and I have a joke that I fall in love with all the characters that are so deep, but then they die. So,
So Game of
uh,
Thrones is torture for you.
yeah, oh my god, that when the first time I read Game of Thrones, which oh god, what is the first book called now? Because I'm so used to calling it Game of Thrones, even though that's not what the series is.
The first book is called Game of Thrones. The second one is called A Storm of Swords.
Okay,
Wait, let me check. I'm like
it's right
looking that up
there. You're prepared.
right there. I can look. It's like
Yeah,
behind a bunch of stuff, but yeah,
like the third or fourth one isn't the third
A
or fourth
Feast for
one actually
Crows.
like, yeah, yeah. Well, either way, so I remember reading the story and like leading up to the point, I'm like, oh, I like it's not gonna happen, like whatever. And then it happened, and granted, Game of Thrones is over now as far as television goes, so it's hard to have spoilers. But the thing happened, and I was like, wait, what? And then I jumped into the next book, like waiting for it to be like fixed, in a fantasy setting, like for it to be changed somehow, and it never did. So I was
Mhm.
like, like why would you do that? Like why would you make me like him so much, and then why would you stab me like in the heart? Book one. But anyway, so character development very important, and then the last season of Game of Thrones feeling like it really did to me feel like they like took some of their developed characters and was like, threw it to the side and let's do this to wrap it up.
It was so sloppy.
Yeah.
It was very poorly done. I really feel like, I mean, Game of Thrones always had issues with, especially with its portrayal of people of color, with queer
Mm-hmm.
people, and with marginalized genders and sexual orientations. Like that has always been an issue. The way that they did Daenerys wrong, though, was so. I I remember watching the very. I'm not sure it was the last episode, the second last episode, where spoilers. She conquers King's Landing, and
Hmm.
she addresses the Unsullied and whatever Dothraki have actually survived, which is not many. So she's talking to them. She's got Drogon behind her, and like one of the things that you learn in film school, or like if you're interested in any kind of film theory,
Hmm.
is understanding propaganda film.
Hmm.
One of the best and most notable propaganda films ever made was Triumph of the Will, which was done by, oh my gosh, I forget her name. But she was a German filmmaker. I'm gonna look this up. Um, and uh, Leni Riefenstahl, and she at the time when she did this, like the way that she angled the camera, like she definitely did the camera angle from like the bottom up,
Hmm.
um, lines and lines of goose stepping Nazis, etc. And then Hitler, the Führer himself, like barking at like everybody. It was it felt like almost like a frame for frame recreation of some of those scenes from that
Hmm.
film. And I was just sitting there. I remember sitting there with my friends, being like, "This is just a Riefenstahl like knockoff," and I am personally insulted that they took one of the most interesting dynamic women in
Hmm.
like literature and basically literally made her into a Hitler stand-in
Yeah.
essentially. And it really felt from like that perspective like they were hitting you over the head with the
Yeah.
imagery, with the staging. It was just so not well done, and like it was, I don't know, I felt like the complexities of her, watching her grow from this very unsure, very timid young woman into a leader who is fearless
Hmm.
and really believes in herself. And then suddenly into this egotistical megalomaniacal person. Like it didn't
Yeah.
really. Maybe if they had like a few more seasons, I think they could have probably maybe made a better case. But they squished it so much
Yeah.
into just one season that was like not even a whole season. It felt extremely out of left field. So
Yeah.
that was
If
so weird.
I think if I mean I know how I personally felt about it, but I think I remember hearing some other people kind of use similar wording where it was a very
Hmm.
hollow ending. Like normally when a series comes to an end, you want it to like you want to close up all these loops and all these loose ends and everything, and you want to have closure on a lot of different topics and a lot of different arcs and a lot of different storylines and everything. You want the bad characters to get finally punished and the good characters to finally have their victory, in the more epic storylines and all that stuff. And everybody was like, this didn't feel good as an ending. It felt like like you were saying, like sloppy. It felt like lazy to just end it that way.
Like the fact that they just had like we had the the fortune from Maggie the Frog telling Cersei that the Valonqar, her younger brother, was going to kill her, and like Jamie, and that didn't happen. Like neither Jamie nor Tyrion did that. So I'm kind of like, but we had
Yeah.
that whole scene in like season three. I don't.
Yep.
Ah,
It was supposed to mean something. They were the
it was
chosen
supposed
one.
to mean something. Well, I mean, she was chosen to be killed, but by I mean, it was so clear that like there should have been that whole thing where Jamie found his conscience, and then like
Yeah.
it's like you're a monster, and then yeah, I just yeah felt feelings.
Yeah.
Feel flames. Flames on the side of my face.
Flames, flames
Flames.
coming from my face.
Flames.
Um, so believe it or not, um, Game of Thrones was not originally one of the topics that we were going to talk about, but
Oh goodness.
how do you not like? There's a mention, and then like you think about it, and then you're like, hey, no, let's address this, even if we've addressed it before, even if people have said the same things before, we just gotta say it again because we're all angry. But so you Michelle, are known for your Vorthos career in Magic, I guess.
Oh,
Would I say it that way? Is that
yeah,
correct?
I guess I am known for being loud spoken and writing lots of things about Vorthos stuff. And I also have a podcast where I am also vocal about that as well. So
Okay.
that is not an unfair way of putting it. And that's
Okay.
not an yeah, it's a pretty concise way of yeah, looking
Okay.
at that.
I want to make sure like I'm wording it the right way.
Oh yeah.
So the story of Magic, right? Like not even just like the actual story, like the written word of Magic. Because if we wanted to get into that, I could bring up War of the Spark just to give you a heart attack. The face. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. But I'm actually want to talk more about like the structure of story that we've had for I want to say the past like 3 years or so
Hmm.
has been kind of haphazard. We had it going really well for a while. The stories coming out every week on the mothership on magic.com and
Yeah, the unknown realms. Yes.
yeah, everything was really good. I mean, we had character development for a while. I mean, even as recently as like the Ixalan story, where everybody went kind of crazy over how well it was written for Jace to have that huge spurt of character growth. And then, I mean, I don't know what happened. Like, it was hard to keep track of it all. I mean, they cut out the weekly stories for a little while, or almost a year, I want to say.
Yeah, it was pretty much for almost a year. It was gone. With regards to um I mean, I don't know if you wanted to lead up to a question, by the way. I feel like I
No,
interrupted
I
you on
mean,
something
if
else. Oh,
you
okay.
feel free.
So it seems to me that, oh, well, first of all, I think it's important, and this is a hard lesson for anyone in the Vorthos community. I certainly learned this the hard way when I fell headfirst into Magic Story, even to the point where I helped build a podcast around it. Um, it is tough to exist in a community where your your little subsection is focused on a byproduct of the main product of a company
Hmm.
um, because because what you are spending most of your time on, what captivates you, will almost never be the main focus of what that company is trying to do. So Wizards of the Coast, like backtracking, and I'm going to sound very, very cynical, but this is just based on my experience in the corporate world.
Hmm.
When a company decides to create a game or create a product, for example, let's say Dyson. Dyson makes really great vacuum cleaners. Uh, and household appliances, mostly vacuum cleaners though. They make like really good vacuum cleaners.
Yeah, it's their
Um,
like signature appliance or product.
yeah, or KitchenAid, like they make really great stand mixers. Um, there's going to be, some things that are going to emerge in that community that are really excited about Dyson vacuums or KitchenAid. Like some people are going to be there's definitely a cult status amongst like KitchenAid people about like what color you have and like
Mm.
oh is it like an older model of color and like oh how much horsepower does your thing have? It's going there's going to be like that sort of side venture I think or like
Hmm.
a bite that community is going to arise as almost like an unintentional aspect
Yeah.
of that. But I mean, companies are aware of that, and that's why they start catering
Hmm.
to that part, which is why KitchenAid stand mixers have exclusive colors, exclusive ranges, things like that. Um, with Wizards of the Coast and Magic the Gathering, Magic didn't start out with any lore. Lore was sort of just kind of created because people were starting to try to already create stories of their own. It's very easy to do that within the game. Like, I'm a wizard, you're a wizard, we're fighting with our beasts, our beasts put on hats and I don't gloves and they have
Hmm.
scimitars and now they're getting into battle with each other. And I cast fireball. But um there and so that sort of that desire for that kind of grew out of things sort of organically, but it still never was like a main part of the game. It became a component of the game,
Hmm.
and I think that unfortunately, as time has moved on, it really seems very clear that story is no longer, I think, a very critical part of what this company or what I guess when it comes out of brass tacks, what the game needs to succeed and survive.
Yeah.
Um, Magic is the best game on earth. It is one of the most complicated games on earth. And that is mostly due to an excellent understanding of game theory, game philosophy, and just very clever, very intelligent design. Um, you don't really need a lot of story for that. And so I think that's
Hmm.
one of the reasons why we've seen story kind of drop off quite a bit, because it's, I mean, I think that they did try with War of the Spark to sort of make story more of a thing and in order to become like a book where they can monetize it and whatnot. I think that's sort of the main aspect of it too. I think one of the problems where that WotC like created when they saw how popular story was is they were like, oh, why don't we try to elevate it in a way?
Hmm.
And that made me really upset because by elevating it to another point where like people can't access it,
Yep.
it I think cuts the story off for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Cuts their appeal to a lot of people, and so it's um, and so I think like they in their attempt to make it more marketable, more elevated, bringing in people like Greg Weisman um, and Martha Wells and Nikki Drayden, a lot of really talented writers. They they kind of almost did a disservice where they took away a lot of the accessibility of the story,
Mm.
um, and it hasn't really been repaired as well as it could be since. I know they've started with Zendikar Rising. My podcast, The Lord Rogues, did cover that, but I mean, it's going to be a while before we return to, I think, anything that we were before. At its heart, I think the core of Magic story is that it is accessible and understandable by all, um,
Hmm.
and and it hasn't been for a couple of years. And I think that's really decimated the Vorthos community in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I almost think that at this point, a lot of the older lore and everything is almost better distributed by fan made sources. You have like wikis and everything like that of where they explain the lore and everything. And Wizards has some lore on their site and everything for certain characters. Obviously, like all the planeswalkers, especially the main ones and the more recent ones, they have blurbs about
Mhm.
them. But like some of the wikis that if you really go out and Google important characters from flavor text and previous arcs and everything like that, or like the older novels, will have like
Mhm.
almost like a realistic Wikipedia style recounting of how the story is developed, you know, back then. And now, like if you really go and compare like some of the back then stories to some of the stories we have now, it feels a lot like the sets are more rushed and compact, which I think, I mean, who knows, like they went away from the block formatting and everything like that with everything, so maybe that has something to do with it too, where that's kind of
Yeah,
like game mechanics and story kind of like mingling.
I think that honestly, um, there has been a lot of it's really clear to me, I think, that there is pressure to make the game much more lucrative. And
Yeah.
with the um oh gosh, there's a concept in economics, I forget what it's called precisely, where you sell basically the same product, but like you market it to different tiers of individuals with differing income levels, essentially.
Mm.
Um, we're getting that with the VIP collector boosters versus say the draft boosters or like theme boosters, etc.
Yeah.
So, um, I just don't think that story is a priority anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's there. I just don't think it's a priority. And I think you're right. Most of the way anyone looking to get into the Vorthos community, I think the best way of doing it is basically DIYing it, going into the AO3. I think that's where the spirit of Vorthos lives on.
Yeah.
But right now, I just don't think that right now that the mothership is going to be that source, which is a shame because one of the things I love best about Magic has been its color pie philosophy. And being someone who majored in political science and philosophy, it's really amazing to see to sort of see what a beautiful how beautiful like these five perspectives combine and express themselves, not just through game design, but also in terms of character creation.
Yeah. Through the
So mhm.
through like the ideals of the colors and everything like that. Not necessarily the strengths and weaknesses, like you're saying, style of the parts of the game, but the concepts that are behind what I guess fuels why those strengths and weaknesses are the way they are. I guess is a way of saying it.
Yeah, there's a reason why you're doing the way things you're doing this the way you're doing it.
Hmm.
Um, and inherently, like black aligned mage, for example, like Liliana Vest, who they did dirty, she wanted power, like, and black at the end of the day, like I always quote Mark Rosewater's uh color theory articles. Like I think that those are like the Bible of
Hmm.
the color pie philosophy. But black wants power, but there are different reasons why someone will want power, and that's why, for example, Liliana Vess is different from someone like Obnixilis. Obnixilis was in first black aligned because he just literally wanted to see worlds burn. I
Yeah.
mean, that was how he wanted to express himself. He had this very nihilistic owl man sort of perspective where he realized like your decisions don't matter. The only decision that really matters is one that cannot be undone. And basically that means destroying your entire plane. um, and whereas Liliana, she wants power because she was basically born into a situation where um, she realized it was the only way to get forward. And this was, it was the only way that she could get respect. And when she entered those contracts with demons, like this was her way of trying to regain control of herself as a person, to literally empower herself. So that's very, very two different perspectives on being a black mage in Magic the Gathering. And that's why for character development purposes, like there are so many possibilities when you see this pie and you see like okay, you look at a black white aligned person and you look at another black white aligned person, you see like oh, there's differences in the way that they conduct themselves and their priorities, and so many, there's just so much rich material. And
Yeah.
so that's sort of the biggest tragedy of the past 3 years when you look at Magic Story. It's really just the waste of potential.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
It's like
like even with Commander Legends, like we're seeing some really cool stuff coming out, like
yeah.
Lisa, the Dusk, the Shroud of Dusk. Like I want to know more about her. Why don't we have a story about her? There is no story about her. Okay.
I mean, there was one of the previews from today was well, first of all, are you like one of the folks who avoids previews, or are you okay if I say stuff?
Oh, I'm okay with previews. Okay, I did
Okay.
talk about Lisa.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure, but like, well, actually,
No, it's all good.
Lisa's a whole nother tangent I could also go on because she's from one of my favorite planes. But like, one of the other previews was Nimris, Una's trickster, and
Oh
like
yeah.
the whole like Una and the whole plane is just like still has so much depth that we could go back and probably like we could probably spend multiple sets in multiple worlds. I'm still
Absolutely.
a big advocate that I would go back to Eldraine for like 5 sets. I loved that world where it was taking adaptations from fairy tales and everything like that, but tying it all in to excuse me into like this separate kingdom with different social rules and everything like that. It wasn't just like, like some of the fairy tale movies that we have where it's, fairy tales, like it wasn't like Once Upon a Time where fairy tales tapping into modern thing. It felt like its own thing, even though you could recognize the fairy tale tropes. So I could honestly, there's a couple other planes that I could go back to that just because there's just so much more. We could do so much more. We could see so much more. The ideas are, and not just like, oh, the one thing that I want to see. I could think of a bunch of things, even things that I may not, personally, it may not excite me, but I could see it making sense if they did it. So, like, I really do agree that there's a lot of potential in these worlds that they've set up, in this multiverse that they've set up. And with the way they've handled the story in the past 3 years, it doesn't feel like we're going to get to really, like, see that potential come to fruition. With Zendikar Rising, I do hope that is, like, kind of them moving back toward it. As you said, like, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen over one set. But with us, with like the 2021 set releases and everything like that, with Kaldheim, yeah, Strixhaven, the D&D one maybe not as much because that's it's a crossover-ish thing, so like there will be story there, but it will probably be something a little bit more than like different than what we're used to. But then like going back to Innistrad,
like all the it's gonna be Forgotten Realm stuff. So like the lore has already been established, and there's a lot they can already tap in because D&D lore is like D&D is such an interesting product in contrast to Magic the Gathering because it's literally telling stories.
The equality of, I think, your D&D session for me, and again, like some people will be fine with just going into fight after fight after fight, and that's fine. But the quality of a D&D session to me is kind of based on like how much you can learn about like the world and interact with the world and change things and kind of like feel immersed right in this creation. So the D&D one's gonna hopefully, hopefully, we never know, but the D&D one will hopefully feel kind of like a, I guess I don't want to. I'm trying to think of the right way to word this so that it comes across.
It's like,
sorry.
I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good if only because it's the table's been made. The food has already. It's like getting takeout. Like
it's going to be like a treat. I think for Vorthos people, maybe not necessarily in the Magic the Gathering lore sense, but if they somehow manage to make a set that is in a heavily established D&D world and not give us like all kinds of goodies and Easter eggs and everything and fun characters, I'm gonna really question who's designing these sets at that point. It's like, how do you do this? How do you like hand somebody the ball and then fumble at the 1 yard line? So sorry, I got my sports ball in my nerd.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I am not a sports person, but I like to think that I could handle the ball further than 1 yard.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 3 feet.
Tackled at like a 3 yard line.
Yeah. No, you'd be fine. You'd be fine.
There's like a SpongeBob thing. 9 feet later, I'm just down. Like the balls we take, and I have like 10 people on top of me.
You're like looking at the water bottles on the sidelines again. SpongeBob, I don't need it. I don't need it. I need it. But yeah, and then going back to Innistrad for the third time, like that's another thing where I'm like, here you are, like you have so much storyline invested, because whenever we go back to a world, Ravnica, Innistrad, Zendikar, where we have seen lots of sets in it, or like something like Dominaria, where like it was the home of Magic. That's the time. That is the time to really like push us over the top on storyline, like sell me on my characters, and they're doing a decent job of that right now so far with Commander Legends, and I've felt pretty happy with Zendikar Rising, seeing Nahiri back on her own plane and seeing her evolution of a character. Again, spoilers. But yeah, seeing her grow as her character, albeit maybe not the right direction. But well, yeah, some people would disagree with me, I guess. But yeah, these sets coming up are like they're giving themselves a chance to do really good storytelling, and I really hope that it's not like another like, oh hey, we have a novel coming out. Because now, anytime I see a novel for Magic, like it worries me, which is not something I ever thought I would say.
Yeah, they, yep. I don't think that they're gonna do that. I feel like after Forsaken, it's gonna be. I think Forsaken put a nail right in that coffin,
Yeah,
as far as that is concerned. So I would be sad and a little bit surprised if we return to that very very soon. That model.
yeah, and to be honest, like it's not all even bad. Like, okay, it's mostly bad, but and I go back to Eldraine for this because that was a good set for me. But the novel that came with Eldraine, I loved it. Well, it
Oh
was
yeah, the
like
Wilford Quest was great.
that was
Um,
I couldn't. I mean, the only thing I didn't like about it is that before that story and before like us knowing more about like the Kenrith twins, I didn't really like Will and I liked Rowan, and then after the story, like I couldn't stand Rowan and I liked Will more. I didn't really like him, but I liked him a little bit more.
it's so fun story. When we interviewed Kate Elliott for the Lore
Hmm.
Boys, turns out she has twins.
Oh.
Um, she has twin kids. I think two boys,
Hmm.
and it was. It's interesting because this is not the first time Kate has written for Magic the Gathering before. She did write the Chronicles of Bolas
Hmm.
for I think M18, M17, M19. I forget precisely that one chorus set with all the dragons. I like Chromium Rule is there. You turn him into a guy named Ham. It was cool. And but uh, I think one of the reason I think that that's definitely I think if they could have done it right if they stuck I think to um really good writers I suppose and given them the space to breathe.
Yeah.
So for example, Martha Wells, like she is a multi Hugo winning author,
Hmm.
considered to be one of the best writers, genre writers, just best writers of all time. She's great. I will defend Murderbot Diaries to my death. And unfortunately, though, with Dominaria, she was given a
Yeah.
near impossible task where she had to incorporate a whole bunch of legendary creatures, and Yargle made an appearance. Yargle. We didn't need Yargle. I mean, I love Yargle. I bought the Yargle secret lair. I'm gonna say it. I looked into making a cosplay for Yargle. But did we need Yargle in the story? We didn't need Yargle.
He was a random encounter.
It was just like but there and then like there was just so many things that she had to fit into such a
Yeah.
small space that it felt really really cluttered and there wasn't a lot of room for the characters to breathe.
Yes.
um like while I wish that I could have learned more about Eldraine as a plane. Like I
Hmm.
like this is the plane to have had an art book for. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. I'm gonna say that until I die or until it comes out. But I loved that this little story gave her the room, like the limited set of characters, gave her the room to develop each and every single one of these individuals in a way that was emotionally satisfying for everybody.
Hmm.
Um, like I love Will. Will is just great. Rowan's just a disaster. He's
Exactly.
constantly running into things. You're just like ah, and Will's just like maybe let's not do that. And Rowan's like let's do that.
Rowan
Um,
wouldn't even say anything. She's already gone. She's already in
she's
trouble.
gone. She's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet when they hit Kylam that she was the one to sign them up, and Will was like, "We did what now? We have to fight who now? We have to fight this giant ogre with one eye. Okay,
Why? Why have you done this to me,
why?
sister?
Why did you sign us up? Okay, I guess we're doing this now. We're fighting an angel and a demon pair. What? And meanwhile, Garrick from the sidelines is like, ah, yes, they're doing okay. No one has to get into it just
they're
yet.
they're not
But
dead yet.
I do love that Garrick has been reassigned to multiplanar babysitter.
I'm just glad to see him back into the storyline and not. I didn't have a
Not a
problem with this
terrible
whole.
person.
Yeah, like I didn't have a problem with him, being cursed and spiraling. Like that's a storyline. That's a not a cliche, but like that's a common trope or whatever, and that's fine.
Hmm.
But something about the way they executed it was it didn't sit as well as like I think it could have. Like they didn't really give him a
Yeah.
purpose except to just be a dick.
Yeah, it's definitely it was always a little difficult to fully empathize with Garrick when he was cursed. I I definitely think that um, Kate did a wonderful job reversing a lot of that,
Yeah.
really taking almost back us, really taking us back to his roots
Hmm.
as the son of a farmer, a persecuted farmer, someone whose civilization did nothing good to, um, and I think that Kate did an excellent job, like finding that emotional resonance and amplifying it
Yeah.
within the Willard quest so that we, the reader, actually care about Garrick now. Like before, we
Yes.
were like, he's that just big, scary hunting dude with wolves and an axe. Like,
Hmm.
uh. And now he's someone who has ambitions and goals and affection.
Yeah.
That's something new.
He's relatable now.
And Lyndon is a badass, and I love her. One of the best characters to ever come out of Magic.
I would really like to go back just to see what she does now that like once you get to the end of the novel for
Yeah,
Eldraine,
I
like and learn everything
honestly
that
I
you
wish
do. Hmm?
we could like go back in time, like
Oh yeah.
to see her and yeah, to see her and her husband Kenrith like as younger knights
Yeah.
like pursuing their quest. I would love to see that.
Like the chronicles of that led up to where they were in
Yeah,
Eldraine. Yep.
yeah, the quest. Yeah, Lyndon's quest. I could see it now.
Yep.
It's a saga.
Uh-oh. You said magic word. Um but yeah. And it's kind of funny too, just going back a little bit to the Garuk thing because Garuk thing, the Garrick thing. Now that he is relatable, it's funny to think because after War of the Spark, like a lot of people were hypothesizing that he was going to be the next big bad guy, and now like he's back to his original, well, not exactly his original self, but he's more his original self than he just was, and it's just funny to see like how far off the mark those ideas were, because I would have believed it too. Like if you had turned around and said, oh, Derek was kept out of sight, out of mind, so that he could then come back and maybe hunt somebody down or become like this like I don't want to say Joker version, but like hunter version of like the Gatewatch or something like that, I would have believed it because of how they portrayed him. And now it couldn't be further from the truth, like he's going through the multiverse trying to, like you said, babysit completely, like not the swerve I thought we were getting here.
Standing behind a pillar at the Coliseum, and Kylo just like, they're doing okay.
Like
I can go
somebody comes in, tries to bully them because they're the rookies on the plane and everything, and he's just like
They
he looms in the
mysteriously
background.
disappear.
Yeah.
He's
Oh,
like,
I was just thinking like he does the whole like stands in behind them and they don't know he's there, but he's like doing his scary pose, and the person's like, "Oh, never mind, sorry guys, yeah, you're fine." Blah blah. Like, yeah, we showed him, and then he just walks off before they turn around.
Don't mind the 8-foot man hiding in the shadows behind you. Yeah,
He's
I think that's what makes such good storytelling, and I
yeah,
think that's what has been when at its height, that has been what has made Magic so so good. Just taking magic and elevating it in a way that is still accessible to everyone, but also deepens and matures some of the basic concepts we know as magic players.
Yeah.
Like green, everyone used to make fun of green because like, what does green do really? It just stomps on things and is big and ramp stuff. And it's like, no, green is actually kind of ridiculous and according to standard can do everything. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's also just and that's one of the things I like about like Zendikar Rising was we actually got to see a standoff between a green line planeswalker and a white line planeswalker, two allied
Mm-hmm.
colors that are not usually in conflict, but we really
Yeah.
see the key difference between the two of them, which I was really inspired and a really good idea.
Yeah. So we talked actually a lot. I didn't think we were going to go on quite this much, but again, Magic Story. You get started on it, and it just takes you away. Uh, when Magic Story was in kind of, I guess, like its dark period that we just recently had, it made it kind of harder to enjoy the game. I know for you, I know for me, because again, that's like something that we get excited about. That's something that we get really hyped up about is to learn more about these characters, to learn more about like how they're interacting with each other and how they're affecting these worlds that we want to know more about and everything like that. So I actually remember a while ago you made a post on Twitter talking about how you weren't sure how you saw, and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm not quoting you exactly. So I
No worries.
apologize if I misspeak anything, but you weren't sure where your place in the community would be moving forward. And
Hmm.
I remember reading that and I was like, man, I really don't know. Like, I could talk about Commander all day long, but so can so many other people. And a lot of times I would try to, gush about storyline and characters and things like that. And with it not mattering as much, like, you know, what do I have to really like endear me to the game then? So
Hmm.
it's been kind of hard over the past year, I think, uh, specifically the past year, trying to find ways to still be excited about the game. And I
Hmm.
think when you made that post, you talked about like focusing on other things, and you also talked about not basically like putting all your eggs in one basket when it comes to like what you identify yourself as. And I was hoping that you'd be
Hmm.
able to talk a little bit more about that mentality that you had when you were, when you were going through it yourself and when you were like writing, those words.
I think I was seeing a lot at the time. I was seeing a lot of my friends go through this problem as well. Um, I think it was in many ways an echo of what I had experienced in my career um, in tech.
Mm-hmm.
It's very easy when you join a startup,
Yep.
especially when you have a very charismatic founder or a very charismatic leader. They sell you on the product. You're like, we're going to change the world um, with our whatever 3D printing system. And it's, I mean, like, and you could, or it's like, we're going to do it with like a new way of storing stuff on servers. And it could very well, but and the thing is like I learned the hard way when I was in those positions in those startups and businesses that there are a lot of things you can't control,
Mm-hmm.
even when you're directly involved. Um, like businesses in general, there are a lot of things that can happen. I think that just is life as well. Like the gosh, I hate to say it, but I'm going to quote Hamilton. Um, like Aaron Burr's "Wait for It" is one of the best songs of all time, and and he quotes in that word like, "I am the one thing in life I can control,"
Mm-hmm.
and that is a very important realization to make as an adult, as a person. Realizing this again when it came to Magic, seeing the community slowly die a bit and start to fall apart, seeing motivations wane and just kind of wither, it really became clear to me that if I wanted to become and stay a happy, healthy person, I needed to diversify my identity,
Yeah.
and maybe take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Are there different aspects of the magic community that I can maybe invest in that would be better? Is this whole community something I would like to keep being a part of in such an intimate way? Um, and I decided personally, like, no, I don't think that that will be the case as long as Magic Story continues to be rather lackluster, taken to the side, or just downright offensive, you know?
Yeah.
Um, because at the end of the day, like, even if you believe in reincarnation, you still, your days are precious. You know, your life is precious. You only have the here and now to own and to possess and to shape and to sculpt. Why spend so much time on something that you ultimately have no control over? I certainly made my opinions about Magic Story and its direction um, very heard, and I am fairly certain that people inside the company are aware of what I think. I like to think that my voice has meaning, but when you look at things and you realize, like, have I done everything that I possibly can do? And you realize you've ticked all those boxes, you've pulled all those levers, and there's nothing else you can do. Then you have to realize, you have to understand that you have to move on. It's like the serenity prayer almost, where you're like, dear Lord, or whomever is in the sky, give me the wisdom to understand, to differentiate between things I can and cannot control.
Yep.
And that's the thing. Like, I can rant and rave all I want, but at the end of the day, I value my time and I value my happiness too much to get so hung up on something like this. Um, and I kind of hope that eventually things get back to a point where I can maybe start creeping back in. I'll be able to make more intelligent conversation about Magic Story, about character development, about writing. But until then, I have other things in my life that are going relatively well. I mean, I have my art.
Yep.
I'm reading other books. I'm watching Schitt's Creek, which if you haven't seen, you should because it's amazing. Uh, I am David Rose.
We're not sponsored. Nobody here is sponsored. Just
We're
so
not
everybody knows.
sponsored. We're not sponsored by Eugene or Dan Levy. Although I wish, God.
Yeah, right? Could you imagine?
um, yeah, and like, and I have my partner. My partner's great. I'm starting to work out again and like slowly building more body intelligence and understanding like what my limits are physically. There's a lot of different things right now that I can um, choose to, go and pursue. It's not to say, and I'm not saying like I'm leaving the magic community or anything like that. Like, I'm still here. I firmly believe that magic should be a game for everyone. That everyone should be able to play it without fear of harassment and um, without fear of being excluded. I
Mm-hmm.
also just think, like, for now, when it comes to the story side of things, I'm just gonna wait and see what happens and try just to let it sit there, just over there like a big rock. Can't move it. Just gonna let it sit there.
See if it kind of rolls down the hill on its own or not.
I don't know, like, big wind comes along, moves it. Earthquake. I can't move it. I don't know. A bear.
Is
Bear comes
Wizards the
along.
bear? Is that what we're saying? Is that where
I
we're
don't
going?
know. I'm not sure where the metaphor is going. I just know that there's a big rock that's Magic the Gathering story, and I can't move it. So maybe it's more like a giant hermit crab because then it moves itself elsewhere.
It's a
It's like
giant
Baba
hermit
Yaga's
crab
house.
that's in its shell right now. That's.
Sit shell. When it moves, it makes you mill. I understand that that is a big thing right now with crabs.
I mean, hey, no, I was gonna make a dumb mill joke, but too easy, too easy.
Too easy.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
I hope
agree.
that answers your question.
Oh, it
Yeah.
does, it does. Again, the main point was really just kind of hear your thoughts on not just where you were when you were writing those things and feeling those things, but also like I guess to get it out there for other people. I constantly see other content creators that I'm friends with talk about motivation or lack thereof. I guess
Mhm.
especially this year. I've
Yeah.
seen over wow. I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years now. I guess. I've seen a lot of people say that, hey, I've had enough and I'm out. I've seen some of those people come back and some of those people not. And so it's kind of a shame when they don't come back, even though, hopefully they found something else, like you're saying, and they're happy with it. It's not always something that I particularly like follow them with. So, you know what I mean? Um,
Mhm.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, I think it's really important that we do kind of assess ourselves not just as what we do with Magic, because Magic is a game and it's a great game. You're right. I love the game. I can't imagine ever like not wanting to play the game ever again personally,
Mhm.
but mm, there's definitely more important things out there too.
And the thing too is like the one thing that's constant in life is that life changes. Um, you like right now I don't have kids. I maybe will have kids one day and I'll become a mother, and that would be cool. And then eventually those kids are going to grow up and that definition of motherhood will change,
Hmm.
um, along with them as individuals, as people. So I think it's okay to like maybe take a step back, to breathe, to recenter, refocus, understand what it is you really want. And I feel like that's a very blue approach to this, to the color pie again, but it's like, are you learning anything from this? Like, what
Yeah.
can you learn? How can you become better? Is anything about this experience helping you improve as a person? If not, why? And how can you put yourself into a position to improve?
Yeah. And
Um,
I just really
yeah,
also want to hone in on one thing that you did say that you were personally improving with. You were talking about working out,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
taking care of yourself, right? And that's something I think especially again this year, we're all kind of struggling with because it's not as easy to do. It's not as accessible to everybody. But I think if you're ever in a position where like it's I could do this thing that's for myself, or I could do this thing that's for Magic or playing Magic or anything like that, I would encourage people, and this is me giving out advice that I never follow myself, but to try to lean toward the taking care of yourself kind of thing, because really the
Mhm.
game's always going to be there for you, but you need to take care of yourself at the same time.
Yeah,
So.
you, and that is more of a black mage perspective, but no one's going to advocate for yourself the same way you can. No one's going to understand and take the time to understand you and what you want the way you can, as long as you're honest with yourself. So yeah, it's it's I think self-preservation has become a big theme of 2020 in a lot of ways, and
I
I think it's a
mean,
good thing.
we
It's a good thing.
we all
It's a
need it right
natural
now.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to ask, did you just pin me as a black mage?
No, I mean I think that everybody is
I'm
combination
picking
of
on
lots
you.
of
I'm
things.
sorry. I didn't
No, okay, no,
I didn't mean to like cause
no.
that that
I
moment of
genuinely
panic.
have conversations with people where I mean, like before J.K. Rowling. Oh, whoop, you see that? It's okay. Sorry, my husband's cooking dinner because he's an awesome person. Um, but like before J.K. Rowling became like apparently unearthed herself as a terrible human being, I was obsessed with the Harry Potter Hogwarts sorting
Yeah.
system of sorting hat. And humans love categorizing themselves. I love like talking about the various ways, like
Hmm.
personalities and priorities, like how we group people into
Yeah.
different ways. So like I don't know, you don't necessarily peg me as like a a a, a black mage necessarily, but that it could just be like I don't know, like some people do, mostly because they immediately give off the impression of being someone who's very ambitious or someone who's extremely self-assured and a little bit like cards close to their chest, kind of. So that's, I don't know. I bet people in the community like that, and
Yeah.
they're great, and I love them. So
I was actually gonna like where this was going was I was gonna be like, well, how dare you? You're right, but how dare you? Just because one of my favorite colors in the game, so
I mean, I love playing black. I've only recently
Yeah.
started loving playing blue. Like my first, like one of my first, the color I chose first to play, when I was looking at intro packs was black because you just
Really?
efficient removal is
Oh, yeah.
so great.
You took
Efficient
the practical
unconditional
route.
removal. Yeah, no, when it comes to playing the actual game, I'm such a spike. I used to compete in GPs and stuff like that, and then later on I was like, nah, I don't want to. The reward system is like totally bogus. So I'm like, I don't have time for this. But yeah, no, I used to be pretty competitive and like did like PPTQs and stuff like that back when there were PPTQs.
I would not have normally pegged you for that, like to have that be super interesting to you. I would have imagined you as more of like the person who builds their deck, for instance, in Commander, because I'm a Commander player. About like the story of the character kind of thing.
Oh
Like,
no, I like winning too much. I like winning
wow.
a lot. Winning is really nice. I don't know if you've tried it. Winning is really good.
I don't know if you win any games, but I win all my games. I see how it is.
I think I'm letting my black mage out a little bit. I'm like, like completely dominating the entire board in a way that makes your opponent feel helpless. Because that's a good
Wow.
feeling.
You're a Torment of Hellfire player, aren't you, Michelle?
If I can pull it off, yeah. You
Ew.
have to ramp the heck out of
Yeah.
your decks in order to get there, though. I think there was a game at GP Portland a couple of years ago where I resolved a Torment of Hellfire. I think I had so much mana. I think it was like 10 instances, 10 or 12 instances of it. It was insane. And we had to call a judge over because we were like, so how does this work? I did this. Help me, please.
I can only imagine like judges before like we had the command zones in like I almost forget what we call it, Magic Fest. Like before we had those sections where like here was the commander players and you basically had to like fight for or not fight for but try to hunt down that free table.
It felt like musical chairs.
Yeah, because they would always come and tell you, "Oh, we're about to have an event. Sorry, you got to move." But I can only imagine how like judges felt when they walked up to a table and it was like, "Hey, we're playing Commander, and this happened," and they're like, "I'm not prepared for this, man." Like, I don't know.
Judge, actually, like most of the judges we bring over for Commander are like really interested in understanding how the stack and layers work in a complicated situation that Commander can bring. I mean, Commander is a judge created
Yeah, that's true.
format, so it's like I'm not entirely surprised, but I hear you. I think like sometimes some judges can be like, "You did what now?
Every
You did what?"
just I gotta believe it. Every once in a while, that reaction comes out of a judge like, "This isn't like anywhere near my pay grade, man." Like, what? I don't know what happens. Damn
But
Commander
yeah,
players.
but yes, I am very much a competitive person, like at
Mm.
heart. Um, I don't know if that's also going into like a blue black kind of situation where I'm like, yeah, I like to stop people, and because I was smarter than them, and haha, like one of my favorite decks is Aminatu, Fate Shifter,
Oh.
and I just love pulling like little engine cards out of there
Mm-hmm.
that blink and like no one expects it, and it's just like,
Yeah.
haha, I just built your entire library.
I will say, just because you mentioned my favorite little witch girl. The first time I played the precon, the year they came out, I actually got her ult off. It was a 4-person game, and it was me and only the one other guy left. So it was basically just we swapped fields, and he was
Oh,
playing. I want to say the Brutaclad deck. I think that was,
yes.
or no, the Sahili deck. I'm sorry. Or were they the same deck? I can't remember. Was that the same
They
year?
were the same. They were the same. They were in the same deck, and Brutacloud was an
Okay.
alternate commander.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, so he was playing the Sahili deck essentially. And I think Brutaclad was out, not necessarily like he was playing it as a commander, but he had like a field. He had essentially cleared out the other two people, and had we just completely forgot about the ult because we even said at the beginning of the game like I don't know what happens when you ult. Like, is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Like, why would you use it? And then I looked at it and I'm like, I think I win. And he's like, how do you win? Like, I have the bigger board presence. Like, I think we just switch, right? And I pointed to the ult and he's like, oh shit. And we read the card a couple times and we thought about it and we're like, yeah, I guess there's only two players. You're on my right, I'm on your left, right? Like whatever. So we're gonna, like, I guess it's mine. He's like, I'm good to just scoop. I don't need you to kill me with my cards.
So we had a similar situation. We were playing Commander at my place, and Doug had accidentally blown up all of his lands by I think created it was like Star Nixfield. I forget the
Oh,
card name, but it
Starfield and
basically
Nyx.
Starfield of Nyx. And then Enchanted Evening, I think. Basically, he turned all of his lands into 0/0 creatures. And of course, the game state's gonna look at that and be like, "Hey, those creatures have 0 toughness. Let's
They're
get rid of
all
all of
dead.
them." So he had that combo on the board and no way to like get rid of it, and it fell to me. So I ulted her, and I thought it would be hilarious if we moved all of our um all of our things to I think the left. So basically, his board became his permanents went over to my friends, and my friend AE he had I think Eryxithes sea monsters,
Mm-hmm.
and basically he was like, I'm just going to like blow up all of my stuff so that yeah, the Eryxithes player got Doug's permanents, and
Mm-hmm.
then um he was like, okay, before all of my lanes get blown up, because I was going to get all of his sea monsters.
Yep.
He was just like, I'm just gonna sack all of my sea monsters, and then it happened, and then turns out two people had no board state, and that was delightful. Like, yes,
Oh. So, but then did Doug wind up with your field?
I had nothing
Oh, okay.
besides Aminatu. I made sure that anything I had was
Yeah,
yeah. So
gotcha.
I
That's
definitely. It's funny because like I have surprised a number of people with Aminatu's ultimate,
yeah.
and people just don't expect it. Like it's like yeah, let's
It's
swap
just such a
everything.
weird effect. Like there's like steal effects and like switch permanents and stuff like switcheroo and perplexing chimera. Like those effects exist in Magic, so it's not completely unheard of. But on as grand of a scale as it is, and just the way that it works, it's very unique. You don't see it coming, you don't plan for it. Like there's nobody out there building the deck like, what happens if all my stuff goes to the right and I get the person to the left of me is nothing. That's not a thought that comes into
Yeah,
play.
and I think it's one of the reasons why I love Aminatu so much. She's definitely one of my favorite decks because of this. Because it's just that there's that sense of like wicked whimsy to
Yeah,
that ultimate that is so much fun to play with.
I think it's also helped a little bit by like the art of her character with like the
Oh, so good.
I
Seth
want to say
McKinnon.
they're moths
Oh.
actually, right?
Yeah,
Or are they
they're
butterflies?
Death's Head moths. They're
Okay,
Death's Head moths. They're the
okay,
same moths you see on the cover of the movie poster of Sons of the Lambs.
gotcha. But
Mhm.
yeah, she just has like a very creepy depiction with like the low lighting. It looks like swamp ground in behind her and stuff like that. And it kind of looks like she's got a veil on, like a funeral veil.
Oh, it's a fishing net, but yeah,
Oh, is it really? Oh yeah,
it's a
yeah.
fishing net.
I've never looked at it close enough, and now that I do, I can see like the rings and everything. But I always thought it was like a funeral veil, like it was a kid wearing a funeral veil. I was like, ah, it's kind of creepy.
She is, yeah, no, she looks creepy, but I think it's because she, as a character, has seen everything, like every
Hmm.
possible outcome. And but what I love about her character is that she's still a kid,
Yeah.
and what will happen if you give an 8-year-old planeswalker powers, you know?
Yeah, and the power to control outcomes or shift outcomes.
Hmm.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
maybe
actually
the past 2 years have just been a big Aminatu troll. I don't know.
why you gotta put that into the ether, Michelle? Come on now. That's not all right. You know what? Now it's headcanon. Thank you for that. I will
So,
say so. The last topic that we were gonna go over tonight, and I guess we'll just kind of touch on it a little bit because of how much fun it was talking about Game of Thrones as well. Um, Something we were going to talk about was brewing in according to thematics. Because again, I thought that was something that I again pegged you as somebody who would do, and I was wrong. I was wrong. But it's funny that we were talking about Amanatu because I actually have a deck that I don't have in paper. I have it online for Amanatu, where I call it, and I called her by the her nickname earlier, but I call it the Little Witch Girl deck. And the thought process behind it is that I love witches in in any kind of lore, pretty much.
oh
Uh,
yeah,
and it's always been kind of a thing that like we don't have witches as a type really in Magic. Like we have witches
which is
and
really ridiculous.
yeah, especially because we have warlocks. We have wizards, we have warlocks, but then we don't have witches. But that whole completely different thing that I could go on to for a long time. So I got it into my head to do a witch deck with her being like the witch prodigy, essentially. Like she's this all powerful witch. She grows into her power really early and she's a kid, but she's, the super powerful witch. And it eventually turned into this idea where her coven, essentially, I've changed it so many times. It was like 7 witches, 13 witches. I got it down to 3 witches at one point. But like the other witches of her coven were other planeswalkers. And I would write into like put them into the storyline based on who they were. So Venser was the one that was part of the coven and then left, and by leaving he died, right? Like you can't nobody leaves the coven. Teferi is like kind of the older, more like experienced one, and that's where nobody's really sure how old he is. He's probably like the more knowledgeable one, and that's comes into people eventually find out that he is like a time age and everything like that, and just stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun, like thematically. It's a curse deck as well. So like it's Aminato or Aminato's like 13 curses. I have like grimoires in there just for the sake of having like the spell books and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I was going to talk to you about building according to a theme or like a story or something like that. But it sounds like you've not really done that before.
Strangely enough, not really. I have a Knights and How to Train Your Knights and Dragons deck that
Mm.
I really enjoy, but yeah, I mean, I think it would be a fun exercise for sure. But like I mentioned before, like we're like we can't help but make optimal decks. I'm sorry.
Every time,
um,
win every
but
time.
but I mean, like I love themed. Like the other deck that I love that's themed and doesn't necessarily have the most optimal cats, but has lots of cats is Kittens with Mittens, led by Nazan. Speaking of kittens, but
Meow.
um, yeah. So I love the idea of like cats with their toys,
Hmm.
going off and fighting. And I mean, like, there's a reason why the cat's secret lair came out before the dog's secret lair. Like, I'm just saying.
Wow.
I'm just throwing that down,
Wow.
throwing that out there.
It's okay,
Um,
Cinnamon. She's not talking about you. You're
um,
beautiful.
but yeah, there's just a lot of really fantastic cats out there, and I love cats. I have two of them. So it's always fun to kind of, and there's some really good cats out there, especially
Yeah.
in Meriden, that do well with equipment.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun, like putting my cats out there, just building my small cat army, which eventually becomes a big cat army, and then just getting in there. I mean, I also really love like zombies, so I do love like themed tribal decks for
Hmm.
sure. That's one of the things that will get me into constructed like any day
Yeah.
of the week. Like the last time I was excited to play standard was back when mono black zombies was a thing, and I was like, this is
Okay.
great.
Hmm.
This is everything I've ever wanted. Zombies of the multiverse unite. From Amonkhet from Innistrad. Let's get in there. Let's make some noise. So, um, so yeah, that stuff like that. Like I love like building beautiful synergistic decks like that. So it's I wish I could say I was more story focused, but I just like winning so much.
It's just like winning so
It's
much.
great. I just love winning.
Jeez.
It's so
Since you
wow.
touched on zombies, and because of course we're in October, um, have you ever done a game against the Horde? Have you ever heard of the concept?
Yes.
You like?
Yes, I
Oh, I
have.
could tell by
I
that
I
expression
have
you're
played.
excited.
Yes, I have played. I lost.
Oh.
But I love the concept. I would be totally down. I think I played during a Magic Fest once,
Hmm.
and it was just super cool. I honestly, I really wish that Arena would do something like that.
Oh.
That would just be so much fun. Like a horde, you got to defeat the horde with like some of these pre-built decks or something
Yeah.
like that, and see how
I
far you get.
I have this love for like these variants on the game, especially in Commander, because it is a casual format, right? You're just trying to have fun and everything like that. So horde decks, planes chase,
Plane Chase is wonderful.
yeah. I every event I've been to, I've always brought my stack of plane chase cards, and we don't get that many games then, unfortunately, because they do tend to, 4-person Commander plane chase does tend to draw on a little bit. Um, but I always bring
Six
them.
person Plane Chase.
Whoa, hold
That's
on.
fun.
Hold on. I draw the line. There's a
Two
line.
people over there are like, what is happening? What plane are we
And then have you ever heard of Kingdoms or what was the other one for it? I know a lot of people know it as Kingdoms, but have you ever heard of it? It's a 5-player game, 2 assassins, a guard, a king, and a traitor.
No, but this sounds a little bit. Is it like Emperor or Star in that way? Like where you've got
Uh Not quite. I think Emperor is a 6-person game where it's basically 2 teams of 3 against each other, and basically the person in the center of each
hmm
team is the emperor, and then like the people inside are
yeah.
like their knights and stuff. This
hmm
one you have 5 people. Everybody gets assigned a role in secret. At the beginning of the game, the only person to reveal the role is the king. The king gets an extra 10 health and is kind of the win strategy of all the other roles. The 2 assassins, they just want to kill the king. They don't really care anything else about that. They just want to kill the king. The traitor wants the 2 assassins to die, but then to kill the king themselves. So basically, like, eliminate the threat, pretend like I'm a good guy, and then sneak in, stab him in the back. And then the guard, his
Interesting.
their only goal is to keep the king alive. If the king lives, the assassins and the traitors die, the guard lives. But the king doesn't know who's who. Nobody else knows who's who,
hmm
so the assassins don't know who's really an assassin and who's, the traitor. Typically, the guard gets kind of figured out the earliest because, again, you
hmm
know who the king is or queen, I guess you could say. Uh, so you know who's the monarch essentially. Um,
hmm
so the roles, like, you kind of start trying to like sneak through the roles of who's doing based on how they're playing, but it's a lot of fun. I've actually, that's got to be one of my other favorite variants as opposed to just planes chase, I think.
Nice. Sometime it seems like it could be a lot of fun.
I will say there was my one favorite story of Kingdoms was we picked decks before we signed roles, because you don't want to pick a deck according to a role because that might set off an unfair advantage. I decided I was going to play my Kranko Mob Boss deck, thinking like, oh, if I get the guard, like, we're golden. I'll murder the other 3 people easily. I got the king.
Mm-hmm.
And then my friend John played one of the mini cards where like you have to attack in a certain direction. Like you have to attack the person to your right. The person directly to my right was the guard. So I murdered them, but luckily I was in a position where like I could live long enough, and I eventually murdered everybody else. But yeah, first thing I did, the first person I killed was the person designed to keep me alive.
Of course.
The Goblin King has no friends. Well,
yeah. Well, I do have a D&D session at 7:30.
All right. So let's wrap it up then. So, of course, thank you for taking time. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. Sorry about the fire alarm situation.
No. We don't talk about that. We're going to cut that out. It's never going to exist.
It never happened.
See, now I'm going to cut it out, but not this part. So people are going to be like, what are they talking about? Yeah. Got to keep the mystery alive. But of course, you mentioned that you have your own podcast, and you also have your ceramics online store, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, I do.
I will make sure. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm going to obviously make sure that links to those are going to be in the video description below for folks who are going to watch this later on YouTube, as well as Michelle's Twitter handle. And then you were going to say?
I was just going to... Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah, so make sure you check out her work. I can't remember the last time she showcased a piece that I didn't think was like one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. So definitely check it. Definitely check it out. Check out our podcast. They talk about the most important thing in the world, of course, is the lore. Unless you're Wizards of the Coast, I guess. Wait, I said the loud part quiet and the quiet part loud. And then, of course, you want to join us every Monday for the streams live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Tomorrow is going to be Alchemist Refuge at 8:30. Wednesdays and Sundays, Frexian's still doing his Pokemon Nuzlocke challenges, but he is going to have to pick a new game because he actually did just beat the Elite Four. Woo! He finally did it. And then Thursday we do 3DH, which of course is the best way to play Budget Commander. Every deck is only $3 to buy and play on Magic Online, thanks to the weird economy. So check that out. That's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time as well. And of course, we try to put all this stuff on YouTube now that I am actually capable of, making all these videos every week. So until next time, everybody, hope you guys enjoyed having Michelle here. I did. And yeah, see you later.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everyone.